Hi, I'm Mindy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to share with you the top 10 books I've read so far this year for the first half of the year, January through June. And like I usually do, I'm splitting it into two lists, which are my top horror reads and then other reads. So I have 6 favorite horror reads and 4 other reads from other genres. I am gonna start with the horror reads, and my 6th favorite horror read so far this year was White Horse by Erica T. Worth, and this is about a young, independent, Stephen King loving barfly who receives a bracelet from her cousin that was originally her mother's, and it is haunted, and it sends her on this journey of discovering about her family, and it was really fantastic. My 5th favorite horror read was, I actually have this one, Boys in the Valley by Philip Fracassi. I just finished this book recently, and this is a coming-of-age story that is also historical. It takes place in the early 1900s in a orphanage for boys run by priests, and it's a very isolated place, and the sheriff comes with someone who he thinks is possessed to get help from the priests, and everything just blows up and goes wrong from there. So it's a story of survival. It's a possession story. It takes place in this isolated setting. There's no cars. They have a horse and buggy type thing. And it's the middle of this horrible blizzard. And there's nonsense going on in the orphanage. Oh boy. Such a good book. A lot of high stakes, lots of death and destruction. And if you like any of those things I talked about, or all those things, check it out. My 4th favorite horror book of the year so far is Don't Fear the Reaper by Stephen Graham Jones, which is the 2nd book in the Lake Witch trilogy, and this one I thought was even better than My Heart is a Chainsaw. This one was more fast-paced. There was slashery things happening all throughout instead of having this only a major. The first book was more slow and more of a character study of the main character and her thinking that there's a slasher going on but not being, like, no one really knows, and then the end is just like this giant boom of activity. But this one was more evenly paced throughout, more of a classic slasher type thing, and it still had, you could tell there was a love for slashers going on, how the story is told and how the characters act. It's a lot of fun. I loved Don't Fear the Reaper so much. It was better than the first, in my opinion. The 3rd favorite horror book of the year so far was Moon of the Crusted Snow by, very sorry if I say this wrong, but I think it's Wabeshig Rice. And this is a apocalyptic story taking place in an isolated indigenous area. I think it was it Alaska or Canada, but I think it's Alaska. In this really isolated place, and it's about the indigenous people having to go back to the ways that they used to live because all of the modern amenities are gone. And it's about white people that come from the nearest city to try to find somewhere where they can survive and what happens because of that. Really, really interesting setting for an apocalyptic story. Just a small, tight-knit community and not really knowing very much about what's going on with the rest of the world. Kind of cut off. I loved it. It was wonderful. My second favorite horror read of the year so far was The Terror by Dan Simmons. And this is a chunky historical survival tale about the Terror, a ship that went on an expedition that made a journey to the Arctic, and they get trapped in the ice, and there is something on the ice that is taking them out one by one. It's about the real horrors of being in this isolated place with no resources. There's just snow everywhere. So their food is running out, coal, everything they need to survive is a limited resource. And they are running out quick, and what they need to do to survive. Then we gotta throw in ice monsters and such. But my very favorite horror read of the year so far has been Blackwater by Michael McDowell. I would say from all of these, this is the least amount of horror elements, but this is Southern Gothic, and this takes place in Alabama. This is a serialized story. It is, I believe, 6 different books, and this puts them all together. And mostly it's a family drama, so it's mostly about the characters and their lives. But there are a few little supernatural-ish bits thrown in there as well to give it a bit of a spook factor. It's got all of the hot, sticky, swampy, southern atmosphere with a little bit of mystery. And I enjoyed all of my time reading through these pages. Now for my 4 favorite books that are from all the other categories, genres. This one was harder to rank because they're all so different, and I have a fantasy, a couple thrillers, and a historical western. So I did my best to rank them, but I'm not really sure where they would really go. I'm going to say my 4th favorite book in the other category is Tyranny of Faith by Richard Swan, which is a fantasy book, second in a series, which is an epic fantasy series that has this kind of a mystery series. There's the main characters are these justices that work for this world they live in to find out the truth in situations and bring justice. So they are in charge of when crimes happen. And this one had a lot more than just the mystery going on. There was a lot of political intrigue and plots and schemes kind of thing going on, which made it so interesting. And I just loved Tyranny of Fate so much. I'm putting The Night Swim by Megan Golden as my third favorite book of the year so far in the other category. And this is a thriller, and it is the first in a series, and it's about Rachel Kroll, who runs a podcast, a true crime podcast, and she investigates unsolved crimes, and she's had a lot of success in finding new information for cases and things like that. And in this book, she goes to this small town. She goes to this seaside town to cover a rape trial, and she's in the courtroom all the way through and giving details about everything going on in the case. And also, a woman gets a hold of her while she's in town about this other unsolved case that happened years ago in this same town. And they say it was an accident, but the sister of the person who died knows different, and they are set to figure out what really happened. My second favorite book of the year so far in the other category is No Exit by Taylor Adams. This was the first book I read in 2023, and I just love it so much. This is the best thriller I have ever read. No Exit is a fast-paced, non-stop, isolated setting thriller about this woman who gets stuck trying to get to her mother in the hospital. She gets stuck in this horrible blizzard at a rest stop, and there's a few other people there, and she ends up seeing a girl in the trunk of a car, like chained up, and she is stuck there for a while. So she has to be careful with who she trusts in the rest stop, and how she's gonna save this girl without getting caught and killed before they can all escape. And it is so good. The most tension, the most propulsive energy just flying through this book because of what a tense situation that is. Who is the bad guy in this group of 4 other people? I also watched the movie adaptation that was made for, I believe, was it Hulu or Netflix? One of those two. The movie is definitely not as good as the book, but it's pretty good. It's just, the book cannot be topped. And that's it. And my favorite book I've read so far in the other category is Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry. This is another long book. This is historical 1800s Western about a group of cowboys that are taking a herd of cattle from Texas all the way to Montana in Search of the American Dream. They heard that Montana has the most beautiful land and nobody is ranching there, and they can make a killing if they brought some cattle up there. But getting all the way from Texas to Montana in the Wild West is no easy feat. It's about all of the adventures and mishaps that happen along the way. This was a really great novel. Definitely not as fast-paced as No Exit or The Night Swim, but those are thrillers. Yeah, they're so different. I don't know how to order them really, but putting this at number 1. Those are my 10 favorite books from the first half of 2023. Have you read any of these books? What did you think of them? I'd love to know what your favorite book is that you've read so far this year, and I will be back very soon with another book-related video. Thanks. Bye.